2010, I moved to Western Massachusetts and decided it was time to tell my parents that I'm gay. I grew up in a rectory my whole life because my dad is a member of the clergy. And so needless to say, my parents are super religious. I knew exactly how they were going to take it, and I could see so many ways this would go badly. My parents had always made their views on LGBT issues very clear. Before coming out, I remember cringing when I heard them say things like, "There's no such thing as gay marriage." Or, "I don't have any problem with gay people, it's just the cohabitating that I think is wrong." As their only daughter, only child, light of their lives, recipient of their love, acculturation, and most precious resources, who had recently found her own bliss, I decided it was time to tell them, even if it meant ruining theirs. After all, I'd already rocked their world a few times with my unconventional ways. I had married a guy from Brazil when I was 24 and they thought I was too young. Then they embraced it, and soon after I got a divorce, which is against their religion. I don't believe in original sin, they do. I'm pro-choice, they're pro-life. So despite all these gaps between us, though my parents have always been very encouraging of my creativity, my academic pursuits, and travel. And in that sense, they always encouraged me to follow my passion. So our relationship is complex. And I say that because I'm not here to analyze them. People are complex. And when relationships aren't one way or the other, it makes these types of difficult conversations that much harder. This time I knew I was about to start one earthquake in their conservative foundation that was going to leave a lasting crack. And I was right. But this is not the story of how they reacted. This is the story of how I prepared to speak my truth and the benefits of that preparation. So first I'm going to tell you a little bit about my background and the resources that I drew on in this conversation. I had studied social psychology and theatrical directing at Carnegie Mellon and NYU. And in undergrad, I became fascinated with the theater laboratory of the late Polish theater director Jerzy Grotowski. I traveled to Europe to research his methods on how he uses physical exercises with his actors. That research led me to discover a concept called rasa, which later became an instrumental tool in my coming out conversation with my father. Rasa is a concept from ancient Kathakali Indian theater. So the rasa is what the audience feels when the actor physically expresses an emotion. So for example, when I do this, or I do this, the rasa is what you feel when you watch me do that. And in Indian theater, there are 8 rasas, each linked to 8 emotions with a Sanskrit name. At NYU, I took a lot of acting workshops in a technique called rasa boxes, developed by Richard Schechner. So Schechner, in his Western adaptation of this technique, decided to put these 8 rasas into a big grid on the floor with masking tape, like this. Aha, there it is, like this. So as actors, we would physically move from square to square on the floor. And each time we would step over the line, we would take on the emotional pose for that rasa, using our facial expression, posture, breath, movement, and tone of voice to convey the rasa from that rasa box. So you've heard of an emotional roller coaster, right? This was like an emotional hopscotch. And each of these rasas has a range of expression. So for example, adbhuta can be total shock, or surprise, or also, curiosity. And the Raudra pose can be extreme rage, or just being really angry, or also annoyed. And hasya can be total joy and excitement, or happiness, and also an expression of contentment. So actors use this technique to develop an agility with their emotions so that they can create a compelling performance from stage. But when I moved through these rasa boxes, I saw them as a platform for personal development to deal with the drama of our everyday lives. To me, these 8 rasas are like the periodic table of our emotions. Together and individually and in their combinations, they constitute all the ways we can possibly express ourselves. And the greater agility we have in expressing our emotions, the better able we are to access them when we need them. So, flash forward to November 2010, when I decide I'm coming out to my parents. I remember having this overwhelming desire to tell them who I am so that I could stop censoring myself and I could feel whole. I had no idea how I was going to deliver this news. All I knew was that I was going to do this one parent at a time and that my father was first. I was terrified. Bionica. I knew that I didn't want to cry. Karuna. I didn't want to go in with anger. Raudra. Whoop. I knew my dad would be surprised. Adbhuta. I didn't want to go in as defensive. Bibhatsa. And I especially didn't want to come across as sorry. Again, Karuna. I was so happy and in love, but I didn't want to go in as too happy and leave myself vulnerable when he didn't share in my happiness or understand. Hasya and Shringara. What concerned me most was the emotional energy that I brought into this room, because I knew that the rasa I generated in this conversation would impact not only the outcome of the conversation, but how I felt about myself afterwards. And I wanted to go in with confidence, no matter what outcome I got, and I wanted to show him that I love him. For that, I would need to tap into Shringara and Vira. So my preparation process had many layers. First, the physical preparation. First, the mental preparation. I memorized exactly what I wanted to say, and I wrote it down like lines for a script. But I knew that wouldn't be enough, because how many of you have ever, I don't know about you, but how many times I have gone into a conversation where I prepared exactly what I was going to say, and then when I get there, it's kind of like my body language doesn't line up with my emotions and my words. So to combat that, I layered on the physical preparation. I made myself familiar with how my facial expression, posture, breath, movement, and tone of voice truly operate when I'm speaking from a place of love and confidence. I said my lines out loud while embodying the Shringara and the Vira that I wanted to generate. I looked into the mirror to get visual feedback, and I corrected any body language habits that I think wouldn't serve me well in that conversation. What I was doing was preparing a physical score for what was about to be the most terrifying conversation of my 27-year-old life. And like a director, I even thought about which side of my father I was going to stand on and where we would walk during this conversation. So when I finally met with my father and I started speaking, the words I had memorized flew out of my mouth exactly as I had rehearsed them. My body remembered for me how I wanted to conduct this conversation. And it was clear my fears were valid. As soon as I said I'm gay, I could tell this was disappointing news to my father. And if it weren't for my body to ground me in those moments, the default emotional patterns that I was afraid of would have definitely taken over. But instead, it was like my muscle memory kicked in, and my body language aligned with my words and my emotion, and my body became my vehicle, delivering my message for me with Shringara and Vira, authenticity and confidence. And that way, I didn't start a fight. I didn't cry. I didn't apologize. 3 things that would have definitely brought about a different reaction from my father. And still, neither of my parents took this news better than I expected. But I didn't go into this conversation believing I could change their feelings. One of my many victories was that I said exactly what I wanted to say in the way I wanted to say it. And in the process, I developed my capacity to use my body language to manage my own emotions. And most importantly, for the first time, I heard what it sounded like to speak my own truth, something that I had never heard so clearly before that day. There was so much build-up to this conversation, and it was so much work, frankly, to prepare, that I wondered to myself if I'd ever be able to pull something like that off again. But after that, it was actually as if I had unlocked a power inside my body and my psyche, a power that I could use to get ready to face anything. And I named this power emotive agility, and I've used it again and again to prepare myself for presentations and interviews, and I've coached other people to do the same. Emotive agility is this power we all have to use our body language to manage our emotions and to impact the outcome of any conversation or presentation. As humans, research shows us that we all universally express feelings of power in the same ways. So you might recognize this as the Wonder Woman pose or the power pose. But what I see in this is the Vira rasa, the archetype for confidence, courage, bravery, heroism. And I've noticed that this ancient concept of rasa transcends theater. Dr. Paul Ekman researched that there are 7 facial expressions of emotion called microexpressions that we universally are hardwired to express and recognize in each other across cultures. It just so happens that 6 out of those 7 overlap with the rasas. And research on mirror neurons shows us how we empathize and why we feel what other people feel when we see the emotions they're expressing. Science shows us also that just by making certain facial expressions, we start to feel that emotion. That's why if you smile, it has the ability to shift your mood. This outside-in concept of emotion has been researched by social psychologists and neuroscientists for decades, and there's a lot of new and important research developing now. I have no question in my mind that the way we use our body language shapes who we become. And it struck me, though, that actors have the benefit of being familiar with the rehearsal process. So for them, it's not such a big leap to transfer those preparation skills into their everyday lives. But what about people who have never even taken a theater class or never had to do any public speaking? For non-actors, I created a technique by modifying rasa boxes exercises to teach emotional intelligence skills through body language. I call this process emotive agility training. I've had the chance to work with amazing people and to help them get ready for high-stakes presentations at work and difficult conversations in their personal lives. Together, we rehearse whatever it is they plan to say, along with the physical expression to generate the rasa that they need to be effective in that conversation. We run practice rounds, and they get video feedback to increase self-awareness. And I've even used the rasa boxes in social emotional learning programming for children, as well as people on the autism spectrum. I think mastering this kind of agility with our emotions helps us to work with our fear, or tame our anger, or to be seen as credible when it counts. Because when you tap into your emotive agility, 2 awesome things happen. 1, other people start to feel the rasa that you express, so you inspire them. If I want someone to be amazed by something I'm saying, I tell it to them with an amazed expression. Second, you feel the rasa that you express, and you inspire yourself. So if I'm having trouble really showing how angry I am, I induce it. I narrow my eyebrows and lower my tone of voice. So if I can use this power to come out to my parents who have such drastically different values than I do, you can use this power to get ready to ask your boss for a raise, or to hold boundaries with someone who's coming on too strong, or to bring your amazing confidence and charisma to your dream job interview, or even to be the one to point out the elephant in the room at your Thanksgiving dinner if you're moved to do that. The thing is, so many of our conversations today are faceless. They have no face because we're communicating through social media, email, text messages, that more often than not, these face-to-face conversations cause us a lot of anxiety. Think about it. How many opportunities have you avoided because they come along with an uncomfortable conversation? Sometimes we're scrolling and clicking emojis more than we're even emoting. I believe we are at risk of losing our emotive agility, of dimming this power. And it's so important that we don't let that happen, because when they go well, those uncomfortable conversations have the potential to change the direction of your life. That's why I think they're worth the preparation. Leveraging our emotive agility, it puts us back in our body and our authenticity, back in a position of personal power and in relationship with each other. And that way, even under pressure, we become able to control the pieces that are within our control. And no matter the outcome, then we know we've made the very best use of our energy, our love, and our time. That's where freedom lies. Because when you can speak your truth, you can live your life by your own design. Next time you feel yourself hesitate on an opportunity, remember that you have the power to create the very best version of the life that you want to lead, and to live it one difficult conversation at a time. Thanks.